It's time once again for another episode of the Buckhead Business Show. Being brought to you by the Buckhead-Business-Association. Broadcasting live from the Pro Business Channel studios in Atlanta. And now, here's your host for today's episode.
All right, we have another great episode of the Buckhead Business Show. Rich-Casanova here, your host for today's episode in our beautiful Buckhead studios, overlooking our $1 million view, or at least $500,000. We've never actually done the math on that one, but we're in the Pro Business Channel studios, and we have a guest joining us, and we're going to learn about landscaping and what folks do in that industry, but not just digging in the dirt and planting plants, but actually designing, installation, maintenance services. And so I want to welcome to the studio Dixie Speck. She's a president and CEO. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rick.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you here. And so what company are you with?
My company is Solterra-Landscape.
Solterra-Landscape. And we're going to obviously delve into that a little bit more. But when did y'all start that?
We started Solterra in 2004. And started out in a small location in Sandy Springs, and wanted to be in Sandy Springs because most of our customer base ended up in Sandy Springs.
Sure.
And then we needed to move to find, as we grew, more space, more outdoor space and zoning for our type of business. So we had to move up to Marietta, up off 75 North, but we still have a lot of our clients, Sandy Springs and Buckhead, as the densest area.
Yeah, we were talking beforehand. You're a longstanding member of the Buckhead-Business-Association as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great group. And that's obviously in part who's sponsoring today's episode. Let's kind of rewind and just talk a little bit about your background, what brought you here today, besides the traffic to the studio. So plants and landscaping aren't just a business for Dixie, but an obsession. So you're one of those folks that you probably wake up in the morning and go to bed thinking about landscaping.
I left a corporate career for my obsession for plants. Yes.
Yeah, I was reading that. So your passion led to leave a career, as you mentioned, in the engineering field. I want to hear a little bit more about what you did in engineering, but that springboarded the move to Atlanta. And why Atlanta?
Atlanta, I've always wanted to be in Atlanta because I was born in Gainesville, Georgia, actually.
Okay.
And my mother's entire side of the family was in Gainesville, and then I had a sister that had moved here to Atlanta, and I loved the vibrancy and the options the big city offers. But when I graduated, I grew up in Maryville, Tennessee for most of my life, though, and went to University of Tennessee engineering program because I love math.
Right. And
back when I was in college, nobody had a landscaping business, just kind of like the young person down the street or retired people, did the landscaping. So I wasn't really exposed to that as an option, but I love math. So went through an electrical engineering program at UT, which led me to Huntsville, Alabama for the job opportunity. So once I was ready to leave the engineering and start my own business, like I said, I'd become obsessed by that time with the plants that I had been learning and seeing about as I had my own first home.
Right.
And so it was an opportunity to move to Atlanta since I wasn't stuck with a job.
Right.
And start and got a degree associate degree from Gwinnett Tech for horticulture and landscape design.
Yeah, so quite entrenched in the whole industry, and very interesting backstory. We kind of led you to today, and so, like you mentioned, is in addition to receiving training in landscape design and contracting, and starting the business. Now, your expertise both in the community and within the landscape industry, you've been on the board of directors for the Urban Ag Culture of Georgia. Mm-hmm. How long have you been involved with that group?
I've been on the board for we'll call it UAC, Urban Ag Council, for 4 years, well, probably 5 years now, because I'm going into the third year as the president of that organization.
All right.
And Urban Ag really incorporates landscaping businesses, nurseries, irrigation, lawn care businesses, anyone who's working with urban cities in landscaping and plant related fields.
All right, and and you've taught classes on landscape design at Emory University,
Yes.
continuing education program, and you're regularly asked to speak at garden clubs, other industry events. This is interesting. You've also appeared as a guest designer for several episodes of HGTVs Landscape Solutions.
Right, and that show was very popular more in the early part of the 2000s. And so I did 3 episodes with that show, design, and then the show itself. And then Groundbreakers is one that's still going, that's produced in Georgia.
Oh, okay. Oh, it is on HGTV Groundbreaker show.
Yes.
I mean, in your industry, as far as to the masses, you can't get much better than home and garden television, what it stands for, right?
That's right. It was exciting. I remember when I first started going to school for the landscaping industry and started my business. I used to watch HGTV, just leave it on my TV,
right, yeah.
and watching the garden shows. And I remember looking at the TV and telling my husband one day, while a garden show was on, it's like, I'm going to get on that show one day soon.
Right.
And it was just a year after that that
Wow.
it happened.
Yeah, for, again, like your industry, obviously there's more industry-specific conventions and conferences or trade shows or even programming. But again, for kind of the mass audience, I mean, that's kind of the granddaddy, I would imagine. And so continuing on the media vein, you've also appeared on Good Day Atlanta, several radio programs, and you're quoted as expert resource in Atlanta Home Improvement Magazine.
Yeah, really good long-term relationship I've had with the Atlanta Home Improvement Magazine. So both in writing articles for them as a landscaping expert and supplying a lot of photographs for them for their issues. Yeah, so they're a great magazine, a lot of great information on and inspiration for landscaping and other home related projects.
Yeah, and speaking of photographs, at your website, it's pretty spectacular, some of the views and very picturesque projects that you've worked on. So let's go ahead and give out that website just at this moment as well.
Great. It's solterra-landscape.com. Solterra comes from sun and earth.
That was my next question, yeah.
Botanical or Latin names for sun, S-O-L, and terra for earth, T-E-R-R-A, landscape.com.
Nice. So the sun and the earth.
That's right.
Pretty much got that covered then, yeah.
You know,
What about the
third
moon?
graders, the third grader class that I spoke to recently got that right away. And when I'm talking to other, adults are like, well, where in the world did that name come from?
Well, I think we kind of overthink it, you know. That's what I'm going to claim at least, yeah. So all the programming we've talked about with obviously the focus on your industry and landscaping design and so forth, we're here at Pro Business Channel, we don't really have a show along that vein, but maybe that's something we might consider. But speaking of business, let's kind of fast forward now to kind of connect the dots here and put your business hat on now, okay? Because not only do you enjoy what you do in installation maintenance and specific to your industry, but what are some challenges that you as an entrepreneur and other folks that you run into from these associations that you're members of? They're all entrepreneurs. What do you feel some challenges facing small businesses today?
Well, definitely, I think you hear this from every business, is the availability of employees. And both availability or willing employees to do the type of work and jobs that we have. And then the other is the pay scale. I mean, even though our pay scale is way higher than minimum wage,
right?
Or even what they want to move minimum wage up to.
Right.
I mean, we're already there. We're already better than that.
Yeah.
But it's two things. I think the not necessarily in wanting to work outside, type of job.
Right.
I may hold people back, but also just the stigma. Of that's digging ditches.
Right.
That's nobody told me that's
Playing in the
something
mud,
I
yeah.
should do.
Right.
When I grow up,
Right.
it's not something I should aspire to. So, But, we're becoming highly technical industry, and there's all kinds of wonderful opportunities and beautiful days most of the year. A lot of
Right.
days we've been having this winter. They've just been wonderful to be able to be outside
Right.
instead of being stuck in an office building.
Yeah, that's the flip side is whatever, you think like, I don't want to work outside, but then you're in a cubicle or just in an office all day, you get kind of monotonous.
Right.
There's no change of scenery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so how much of your business or clients are residential versus commercial?
We have about 80% residential,
Okay.
individual residential homes, and then the rest of it we do several townhome and condo communities where we do the entire communities, and we have some neighborhood common area properties that we do also. And then we have 4 private schools that we do the landscaping and the maintenance for.
Okay, yeah, I want to ask you about that, how you split, how do your business is segmented versus design, installation, and maintenance. But beforehand, one of my pet peeves, before I forget, I was thinking about that thinking about this earlier when we planned to have you on the show, is speaking of neighborhoods or commercial entrances, one of my pet peeves is I don't know why people do this, but they'll spend tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 on their grandiose entrance, right? With the name of the business or the subdivision on this spectacular signage, and they'll put flowers in front of it, but they put these plants that grow up and cover the sign.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or is that just seem like...
No, that happens a lot, and if it's an
why is
older community, older landscaping, the plants that were placed there were just, going to get too big for the space.
But if you're a professional, you're hiring someone, they would know that,
Right.
I mean, I don't even know all the terms, but there's not perennials, but there's the type that, like a small flower bed that just grows to a certain...
Yeah, perennials, but also, you're talking about the flower beds that get too big, too.
Yeah, but what would be the type of flowers that just stay ground level, right?
They're ground cover is what they call them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's even with the seasonal color flowers, you'll see that's ones you change out twice a year. You'll see that they'll get taller than the sign. And again, that's, wasn't really thought out what the mature size was or the height was going to be in those plants, and to keep it low.
But you would know that, right?
Right,
yeah.
right.
But I don't know. And, I could see if it's just an individual home, but you'll see like a massive... one of these behemoth subdivisions, and they have this, must cost them $500,000, whatever, the sign, and they block the sign.
Yeah.
And
one thing they need to do, the design designers too, they need to give a little space,
right,
for
your
flowers
folks
to grow at the bottom, because some of the words, the text is right on the ground, at the ground level almost.
That's a good point too, yeah. So, I mean, you want that, especially in your business, you have an eye for that. So you want that kind of nice, layout in terms of the design, the landscape, and the colors. But I don't know, every time I see a sign, it's like, and it's more than half the time where there's some type of foliage or covering the sign. I'm like,
yeah. Another thing that the maintenance company could do is to cut those lower, to wherever they're hiding the sign or the words.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong. Can't you just take a proactive approach and just know the type of plant that's not going to reach that height?
Yeah, that's the first thing that should happen.
Yeah, then you don't have to maintenance, because maintenance is always going to have an issue.
Right.
Staying on top of that. So meanwhile, I got that off my chest. I feel better. So talk to us landscape design, installation, and maintenance. Mm-hmm. How does that balance out in your day-to-day or your business overall?
We actually have about 50% of our revenue is maintenance service, weekly maintenance service, and the other 50% is the design and installation of new plant materials. Yeah. We do irrigation services too, but we count that as part of installation. So we have maintenance services. We have worked to concentrate them in some tighter areas because of the cost of travel time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then being in a city with a lot of traffic too, it's just a necessity. Also, if your properties are spread out too far from each other, then it becomes more of an issue for the account manager for the property to be able to visit your property as frequently as they could if they're closer together. So we have account managers for certain numbers of clients that they manage, certain areas that are there for the customer to communicate with in either method, phone, text, email, but they are also there to check on the properties a certain number of times, throughout the year to see what maybe the crew's not aware of or not noticing or not sure how the customer wants, like something pruned particularly.
Right. Yeah, that you raise a good point, because I've don't do as much networking as I used to, but there was a point where I was just networking nonstop, and I'd have conversation with trades folks, and HVAC or roofing or contracting or whatever, and I'd ask them. What's good introduction for you, but what area is, do you best serve? And they say all of Atlanta, and they're a 1 or 2 person operation or a relatively small operation. And that's, in my mind, was never a good answer, because, you hit it right on the head in terms of economies of scale and not just distance, but you have to factor in traffic. And they'd say, yeah, take a client anywhere. But if you're based in Kennesaw, there's plenty of business in that area rather than seeking introduction for somebody in Peachtree City to handle one client.
Absolutely.
That distance.
Yeah, and with the scale of what it costs us to mobilize a crew and get them out to a property, and then just the work ahead of that, of meeting with the client and then figuring out what they need and quoting, and it's just a lot more cost than we can do just to go, further out to areas. So concentration is key to staying in business, I think, but also in the service level you can provide.
Right, absolutely. So you talked about account managers. Give us an idea of what type of folks that y'all employ in terms of the different staff or different job positions.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have myself as the president of the company, and also the top service person, I guess, as far as heading up the service aspect of our business. And my husband came into the business a little later after I got it started, but he's very much an important part now. And
what hat does he wear over there?
He's the vice president, but he manages mostly the operations and then also purchasing and maintaining of our equipment, because we have loads of trucks and mowers and everything. Think of a lot of equipment. Yeah. He also is our IT person, because he comes from electrical engineering background too. That's how we met from our former employer. Yeah. So he has created amazing programs and for us to use for our business, to really help our business. So he can
maintain a mower and the internet at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. He said, Peter, hey, my computer's down. What's wrong? The internet's down. Okay, let me wipe my greasy hands out here.
And if he can't fix the computer, he grabs a shovel and just bangs it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Goes out to an irrigation repair service.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
But we do have, on our installation side, we have an installation manager who manages those jobs and materials and schedules them and helps to do some of the design also, and manages the crew. And then we have on the maintenance side account managers, as I mentioned, they're there to really keep a good eye on the properties outside of the crew leaders that are there weekly, and communicate with the client and follow up on the client's needs. So that's and we have a trainer. We have a guy who's a full-time trainer, which is getting more and more important, because it's getting, as I mentioned, harder to find experienced available workers, and we've got wage wars going on among landscaping companies for what's left of experienced people, in our town.
So this trainer, what does this person do?
He is responsible for finding training resources for our crews, and we do a lot of it ongoing with maintenance because you got to be training them on how to prune things correctly. Because with all the various types of plants materials, there's just there's different times a year and different ways that you got to prune them. We got to make our crew familiar and aware and trained on that, and how to identify a weed from a perennial, and how to be efficient also.
Right.
So how do you approach a property with doing all the mowing and edging and blowing and weeding?
There's
and
a system to that.
Yeah.
Rather than just
collecting leaves.
Yeah. Right. So I'll collect all the leaves first, and then I'll trim the trees. Yeah.
Right.
That's wrong.
Yeah, that's correct.
And so how many accounts do y'all typically, have at any given time? Or
we have over 200 maintenance accounts right now.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of opportunities just within the areas that I mentioned, concentrated around Sandy Springs and Buckhead,
and Marietta,
Dunwoody, and Brookhaven, and Marietta. Still a lot of room. Even to grow there, and we're still getting several requests a week, several to go look at for maintenance service, somebody looking for more quality service.
Well, your business is always a growing business. Like you've never heard that before, yeah?
Yeah, really. Love the laugh track.
Right, exactly, yeah. That's the only thing that saved that pun, yeah. That was destined for trouble. All right, so that's really a great business model. Coming back to kind of full circle business is where you acquire accounts and you can maintain those, and that continual revenue stream or reoccurring. Where a lot of businesses, they do great business, but it's more one-offs. So let's talk about organizations. You mentioned like a challenge in developing future employees. What's are there any organizations that you you mentioned you volunteer or are part of the Urban Ag Council or Board of Directors, but are there other organizations that you find? I guess what I'm trying to ask, how do you keep abreast of new technology or new things developing in your business? Conventions or trade shows or conferences or organizations or?
Well, here in the Georgia area and in different states, there's different resources, but certainly the Urban Ag Council. Some people might have been aware of the name Malta, Metro Atlanta Landscape Turf Association. That was that organization name for years, and then they came together with Sod and Turf Association and a few other associations to form the Urban Ag Council, and that started out when we were in the drought and started having different municipalities around Georgia just like ban on irrigation totally.
Right, yeah.
And so that caused a lot of problems besides, directly affecting, our industries, businesses and being able to stay alive. And so we came together to be able to have a bigger and consistent voice with our lawmakers around that.
Yeah.
And that initially was called the Urban Ag Council. But then that issue has not gone away.
Right.
It keeps coming up year after year.
Right.
And then you got immigration and you got, healthcare and just all those things, DOT, OSHA, small businesses, especially our industry, is targeted right now has been for the last few years for looking for citations or opportunities to cite. Like DOT pulled 3 landscape trucks over all at once last week, and one of them was ours for no reason, but just to check and see if everything. They could find anything to find on.
And DOT can just do that?
Oh, yeah. They sure can. And OSHA can just pull up on a property where they see a landscaping crew working and then just, look for violations.
Right.
Or anything, yeah.
I mean, I think people could kind of connect those dots, but at the same time, it's just kind of odd because there's not like an agency that would just show up at our studio and do the same.
Yeah.
Right? Or at a retail store. They're not
Right.
going to show up over at Lennox and just randomly,
Right.
walk into an establishment like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but they can't.
It's gotta be
they
frustrating.
Can and they do with our and as another is the Department of Ag for because we use herbicides for weeds and things like that at a minimum, and then so they could just show up and ask to look over your chemical programs and
Right.
storage and records.
Just a
and-
random search.
Yeah, so you feel like you're kind of on the attack, but it costs a lot of money to make sure that you're in compliance with everything and keeping everything labeled, and that's part of what our trainer is responsible for too. But as far as keeping up with those things, the Urban Ag Council consistently keeps us updated with any of that information, and we have someone we work with that is our legislative representative that keeps us updated on anything going on, especially when they're in session the early part of the year.
Right.
We get a weekly update on anything that could affect our business. And then we have National Association of Landscape Professionals. So it's a full
Right.
national association, and they keep us aware of the same. There's multitudes of several webinars a week to listen to, publication materials, YouTube videos that they produce. I mean, so it's very easy to. There's a lot of great resources for us to be aware of what's going on.
Well, you'd definitely have to kind of stay on top of that, and as well as have a presence in the political arena, so that you're not, so you have a voice there,
Absolutely.
And that it's heard. So, and speaking of being heard, I just want to remind our listeners you're listening to the Buckhead Business Show with your host, Rich Casanova, here from the Pro Business Channel studios. And we're speaking with Dixie Speck, and she is the president and CEO of Solterra-Landscape. Did I get that right?
You got it right.
All right. And so we just got just a moment or two left. I want to kind of wrap things up, if you will. Talk to us about plants and landscaping and how it impacts our environment.
It's very important, and that's something that we had to really press and educate again when the water wars, as they call it, during the drought came out, is that you do need to be able to water your trees when we're in a drought and save the trees because they're constantly working to clean the environment. Right. They actually take in the CO2 from that we're breathing out and from other resources, and use that for energy. But then they put out from that is oxygen. Right. So they keep replenishing the oxygen, and so does grass. Turf does the same thing. All plants do the same thing, and they need water, some kind of regular, smart irrigation, as we say, not over irrigating, but smart irrigation, some minimum to keep them alive. And they also help so much with the Atlanta being a huge heat island, and so very important, to keep our trees and plants and even our turf.
Yeah, I would imagine more traffic, we need more trees, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a direct correlation. You got to keep that in balance.
Yeah,
at the very least. And you're just talking about overwatering. I have some houseplant issues, I think. Would you swing by later and check those out?
Sure, yeah. That's
I never know what to do.
That's mostly what kills houseplants.
Yeah? Yeah, because I had one and had set it outside. I thought to get some fresh air, but I didn't realize how much rain. When I eventually brought it in, it was weeks later, all of a sudden, it was just going south really quick. Yeah. And then I was pulling it out and realized it was just soaked. All the water had stayed in there.
The pots for houseplants typically don't have a drain hole in the bottom.
Exactly.
And so, you put them out in the rain and it's not draining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The roots were just kind of rotting, whatever.
Yes.
And I kept trimming, and I had nothing left.
That's not unusual.
Yeah. So you definitely don't want me working over in at your place.
We have to give you a little training.
Yeah, I'll stick with the radio gig. Yeah. So Dixie, pleasure having you here, and we'll look forward to having you on an upcoming episode. And as we mentioned, you're a longstanding member of the BBA, Buckhead-Business-Association. We thank you for your support of that. And so close things out. Let our folks know the best way to get in touch with you all.
Okay, solterra-landscape.com. And our phone number is 404-236-7557. But just type in Solterra in Google and we'll come up.
Perfect. See you then.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us and our guests on the Pro Business Channel. Use the social media links here to share today's show and stay tuned for the next episode of the Buckhead Business Show. Brought to you by the Buckhead-Business-Association.